A wedding is the day when two loving people promise to spend their lives together. Everyone waits with bated breath for the sacred promise that the heroine must make. They wish for the young to share joys and sorrows and support each other in difficult times. The cardinal solemnly declared, first of all, to live with hearts devoted to each other. He asked the bride if she promised to respect and love her husband until the end of her days. And our heroine, whose name was Satine del Mare, replied that she didn't think she could. In the beginning there was the devil, who used evil spirits that obeyed him, to penetrate into the weak hearts of people and strengthen emotions such as envy, anger, and doubt. And then one day, when the era of people was coming to an end and people attacked each other, a hero appeared who received divine revelation and raised people to war against the devil. Finally, after 15 days, the hero's holy sword pierced the devil's heart. This hero was proclaimed king, and the holy state of Caldabranca was founded. His 5 companions, Cardillon, Del Mare, John Silroth, Selvio, and Quantheon, became the guardian families. Selvio and Del Mare made an agreement to betroth their offspring to balance the forces. By combining the forces of the two families, they wanted to keep Cardillon under complete control. Satin told the groom what preparations were going on for their wedding ceremony. I asked him if he would gain weight for the final dress fitting next week. Giorno Selvio, that was the name of the groom, replied that he was sad that he could not help in any way. She replied that she had prepared everything before he got injured. Then the groom said that he liked everything about her and that she was attentive and smart. Having said that everything had to be perfect, she explained that both families had been looking forward to this day. Afterwards, she asked him if he would be able to walk at the wedding without crutches and how he managed to get injured. In response, I heard that he could not help but intervene after seeing such violence before his eyes, and she said that he was a good man, but it would have been better if he had not suffered. When she asked if the lady he helped was an actress, he replied that she was a prima of the Bolshoi theater. Our heroine thought that she seemed to have heard something about her, and that her name seemed to be Delilah, a girl with lush red hair and clear, transparent blue eyes. Beautiful looks, outstanding acting skills, and a voice that is impossible to tear yourself away from. Giorni said that they hadn't gone out together for a long time, and it was the prima who invited them to the performance. As a token of gratitude, maybe they should go, because they say the performance is incredible. And since everything is working out this way, then afterwards we could go and have dinner together. However, Satin had her doubts, having heard about the actress's problems with her patron, to which the groom replied that they would hardly have been invited if the prima had not returned to the theater, adding that if she was busy, he could go alone. Then she agreed, explaining that it was a good idea, especially since all urgent matters were completed. It would be a good last date before the wedding, and they agreed to meet. Satin's groom seemed a little absent-minded. He couldn't concentrate on the conversation. Since they were connected by early training, she could notice every change in his face. Jorn was a very passive person since childhood, so she always took care of him. She never knew the kind of passionate love that they write about in plays and books. They believed that they didn't need that kind of love, that relationships were better when they were already like a family. After all, there is nothing more valuable than a relationship when they know each other inside and out. Jorn is probably just nervous about the wedding, even if he doesn't show it. Suddenly, her attention was drawn to the red satin dress that the maid was carrying. Our heroine knew perfectly well that Mrs. Selvio did not like and did not wear such colors. Therefore, I couldn't help but ask the maid who this dress belonged to. The servant couldn't lie, so she said that it was Lady Delilah's dress, because on the day the young master was injured, the prima also came to the mansion, and the person who helped the gentleman get to the estate was Miss Delilah. The maid also added that since that day, the prima has been here for safety purposes. After listening to these explanations, our heroine sent the maid back to work. I thought sadly to myself that the actress had been at the Selvio estate all this time. On the one hand, she understood that this was done for protective purposes. But then why did he hide it from her, and didn't even look her in the eyes during the conversation? It all looked as if he had a secret that must not be revealed. Satin was deeply upset by the fact that a stranger was involved in this secret. I thought that perhaps she was exaggerating if he wanted to avoid meeting her. It's unlikely that he would have invited me to the performance, and he wouldn't have made such a stupid mistake, especially right before the wedding, because no one understands the importance of this marriage better than them. because it is a promise between families and the harmony of the Guardian Alliance. And Jorn wouldn't do that to her right before such an important ceremony. I sincerely hoped that he wouldn't dare to do such an act just for the sake of love. After all, it seemed to her that she had studied her fiancé well over all these long years. So when she arrived at the theater, she was determined to enjoy the show. She also heard that the performance was incredibly interesting. The actress was simply magnificent. Besides, she hadn't been to the Bolshoi Theater for a long time, and the evening promised to be quite pleasant. Jorn was already meeting her at the entrance, and she asked if her leg hurt a lot. Having replied that he was fine, he added that one should not keep a lady waiting. She thought it was sweet and said she didn't think he was so kind. And she is pleased that even after 20 years, she learned something new about him. She didn't expect much, but they had prepared places for them in the center of the family sector. He added that the actress was apparently very grateful to him for preparing such places. I heard that even the nobles don't have seats for this performance, and they sit on the ground floor. The groom was surprised, but added that there was nothing strange. She really was an amazing actress. Our heroine was eager to see for herself what all the young ladies were talking about. Miss Delilah turned out to be even more dazzling than she could have expected. Satin was interested in what the singing and acting of this young prima of the theater was like. When the performance began, for a moment it seemed to her that her whole body was shaking. Delilah had a powerful, captivating voice that seemed to embody emotion and technique. Her charming power was so strong that Satin couldn't take her eyes off her. But when Jorn dropped his cane, she had to turn her attention to him. She pointed to the cane, but he didn't react in any way. He was absorbed in the prima. During their meal, he spoke incessantly about the performance and the actress, and I would have regretted it for the rest of my life if I hadn't watched this performance. He's glad he could help her, and when he watches Delilah perform, he forgets himself. After all, how such a fragile body can produce such a voice is simply incredible. Satin thought he was so moved by the performance that he even forgot about the pain in his leg when he said that her charisma on stage was something that could not be expected. And he continued. From her usual behavior, Satin could no longer resist and asked again. Not understanding his fiancé's reaction to his words, he asked if he had said something wrong. Then she reminded him of his phrase about not knowing whether the prima had returned to the theater. But now he speaks as if he knows a lot about Delilah's usual behavior, that there was no need to take her for a fool, and she knew that the prima was becoming in his estate, and he did not accompany her to the theater, as he was apparently busy accompanying the actress. She continued that she wouldn't ask why he went so far to hide it. The fact that he lied won't change, which means he's attracted to this girl, especially considering that he has always been an emotional person and the prima has fallen deeply in love with him. Is it really necessary to explain what the first union of two families of guardians means? She went on to say that if he claims that his feelings are not pity or admiration, and true love has a huge request for him, don't be so ambiguous. Having clarified that she would go first, she reminded the groom about trying on his wedding dress, which is scheduled for next week at the Del Mare family home at exactly 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And since he can lean on the appendage and go to the theater to see a performance, then he will certainly be able to come and choose a wedding dress for his bride. She ended by saying that such behavior is an insult to the actress, to her and to himself. The following week, our heroine was expecting her groom to arrive at the appointed time. All these days before the fitting, she had not the slightest desire to meet him. However, Satin hoped until the very end that he would not make this mistake. The only thing that worried her was the fact that the appointed time had passed, and he had not shown up. He was always a little hesitant and not serious. But did he really want to do this? He didn't even have the courage to let her know whether the engagement was off. She thought that maybe she should rush over there now and teach him a lesson. She was distracted from her thoughts by the maid, who informed her that the fitting would take place a little later, because some of the dresses hadn't arrived yet, and she suggested we go for a walk in the meantime. A short walk definitely helped our heroine change her mood. Her head, which had been boiling just a moment ago, seemed to be gradually cooling down. She wondered what Jorn had been thinking about when he missed today's meeting. Maybe it really is love, and he didn't come to indirectly tell her that he called off the engagement. And what kind of feeling is this love, if it makes a person give up everything? Satin was so lost in her thoughts that she almost ended up under the hooves. It was one of her noble acquaintances, and he managed to stop his horse in time. Having asked why she was walking at such a time, He added that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. He greeted her with the nickname Shorty, which she hadn't heard for a long time. They really hadn't seen each other for a long time. This was a representative of another family of guardians, Rubler Cardillon, and she became curious why they met now. Even among the only family that had raised holy knights for generations, he was a man who showed exceptional talent and surpassed the fame of his family. And it was Rubler who strengthened the position of the Cardillon family, which was already in the lead. She was so thoughtful that he said that if she continued to stare like that, he would blush. Satin greeted him formally, and he asked if they weren't close. She thought he still made her feel awkward. When she asked him what brought him there, he told her that his friends were getting married, so he decided to drop in. She replied that he saw her, and now he could leave, and she needed to choose a dress. Rubler replied that he would help with the choice because he knew that the boy had suffered. Having answered that she didn't need help, she realized that she wouldn't get off that easy, because he said she needed to make sure the dress would match the groom's suit. Sitting down next to her, he noticed that she didn't have as many dresses as he thought, to which she told him that it was a lot, considering that she would have to try everything on again. Looking at her reflection in the mirror, she considered whether the dress was beautiful or not. When I heard his voice advising me not to wear this dress, I asked him to clarify. He explained that if he tightened the corset so tightly, he would suffocate within 30 minutes. Without knowing why, she agreed and asked the maid to bring the following. The next dress was also rejected by Rubler, and Larry brought another one. He asked why one should wear a dress with long sleeves in such good weather. Regarding the following, he said that Mikado silk is too heavy for this season. The next one didn't fit her, because it was poorly sewn and too big for her. When Satin put on the next dress, he liked the design. But there was one thing. He explained that she was too short for a mermaid dress, and again called her short, and she thought that he lived only to tease her since their school days. However, time flew by unnoticed, and the maid stated that the last thing was left, and that thanks to Sir Cardillon's hints, they were able to manage so quickly. Our heroine didn't really want to admit it, but she knew that their tastes were similar, from having clear likes and dislikes and a hatred of compromise. They also had one character trait in common. Their actions preceded their words. If he hadn't been Rubler, they might have been good friends. He got bored, so he noticed that she was taking a long time to change, apparently tiringly. However, when our heroine came out, his face changed and he suddenly fell silent. His reaction did not go unnoticed, and she wondered why he had gone silent. And she thought that he had the same thing in childhood, when he found something to tease her with. Since he remained silent, she became nervous, because maybe the dress was just strange. Although she personally liked this design the most, she decided to go to the mirror. When I saw the reflection, I thought it was simply beautiful, and there was nothing strange about it. But his words that this was definitely not it surprised her even more. She did not understand why. Rubler explained that she was so beautiful in it that he almost confessed. Knowing him since childhood, she didn't believe him and said that he had learned to lie so skillfully. But she still listened to his opinion and said that this is what she would choose. Touching her hair, he said something he hadn't intended to say at first. What Giorno Selvio must understand is how incredibly lucky he is. Guests were gathering at the estate for a small event to mark the upcoming wedding. The friend confessed that she was even a little jealous that Satine was getting married so soon, and she continued, "Where else can one find such a kind person as Sir Jorn? He must be very busy, but he managed to buy those tickets 2 days ago." After all, everyone saw Sir Jorn waiting for someone with a bouquet in front of the big theater. But when she asked whether they had been together at the performance, she received no answer. Satin thought that for Jorn, this was apparently the day he chose a lover, and not the bride, because a couple of days ago she was up late choosing a dress with Rubler. She didn't understand why he always hid everything, and she found out information from others. Her silence was so eloquent that her friend realized her mistake. At that moment, someone in the hall shouted out that Selvio's youngest son had been challenged to a duel. It turned out that Giorni had challenged another nobleman to a duel over the prima donna. This shocking news swept through the hall like a typhoon, and everyone was talking about nothing else. One lady expressed surprise out loud, saying that she thought Selvio's youngest son was quiet, and our heroine didn't even have the strength to feel sadness from this news. However, the unpleasant feeling did not give her peace, and the desire to figure it out turned out to be stronger. When she burst into Delilah's room, She found her fiancé there, as expected. She had neither the strength nor the desire to contain the feelings that overwhelmed her. Having splashed out her emotions, she asked if his family's promise meant nothing to him, and how much longer must she endure this kind of treatment? What did she do to deserve such betrayal? Jorn asked to listen to him. He understood how angry she was, but there was a reason for it. Satin became curious about what could justify turning Delmari's daughter into a laughingstock. Perhaps the man who defended this girl in the duel, a demon, wears his face. Or he wants to say that as a keeper, he could not calmly look at injustice. Jorn interpreted her indignation in his own way, saying that she was as wise as ever. He said that the one who injured his leg came to the estate to beat Delilah. He tried to reason with him, but he started waiving the sponsorship contract and attacking. So the only way to save Delilah was to fight a duel. But Satine knew how the nobility treated actors and how they enjoyed patronage. Therefore, she proposed another option. She herself would become Delilah's patroness, that he would give her money and send her to another country where he would never see her again. Jorn tried to soften the condition, and Satine noted that he was not ready to let the actress go. Looking at the prima, she asked what he thought, that she shouldn't break off the engagement. And she told the actress that if she wanted, she would buy her exceptional talent. And if things are so bad with her sponsor, then there is the option of changing her patron. Nevertheless, our heroine announced to her parents her desire to break off the engagement. They, of course, began to dissuade her, arguing the importance of this marriage. They said that Jorn simply acted thoughtlessly, and the girl was a simple singer. That there was no one in the country who did not know about the wedding in 3 days, and she said that it was about the mistress. The tragic actress and her savior. Everyone will talk about their fairy tale love. And her story, she married against her will, bound by an old family promise. The world will laugh at her, because the noble lady married without a drop of pride. When asked if they thought this union would strengthen their home, Mother answered, "Of course, and she will be remembered as a virtuous lady who defended the honor of her family." Her father added that in 3 days she would become mistress of the house and would be able to send Delilah away. But our heroine didn't want to become the villain who drove the poor girl away. And how they offer her to live with a man who is obsessed with his mistress. The parents were adamant and asked her not to behave like a child. Jorn probably hid his mistress out of respect for her, and that's a good sign. Moreover, the stain on the Selvio name means that their family is indebted to them. The father added that in any case, their child would be the future of the Selvio and Delmar family. She thought that if the marriage took place, they would become lovers, recognized by her, and she will live the rest of her days alone, like a doll. Deprived of feelings, Jorn might feel guilty at first, but it will pass. After all, in the end, she will know about this relationship from the very beginning. That's why she said that she simply couldn't bear this marriage, and that there were other suitors. Then the father asked them to calm down and not be stubborn. They are not doing this because they want to. After all, who could be better suited to keep Cardillon under control? Our heroine realized that all conversations were pointless. She would have to obey. All she wanted now was for the whole ceremony to take place as quietly and quickly as possible. But she still wanted to take revenge on the cheater in a way that did not violate the law. And she asked Larry, then the maid shared a story with her, that he trusted her as much as he trusted his friend, because he believed in his friend. Larry added that she needed to communicate with this person's best friend. Having replied that she would not stoop to that, Satin asked why the maid had come. She, finally remembering the purpose of her visit, announced that the lady had a guest. Satin asked that young Mr. Selvio had come to ask for forgiveness. The man who entered, having replied that this was not her stupid fiancé, added that the guest was quite important. Seeing Sir Cardillon, she said that it was unexpected, because it was without warning. In a peaceful tone, he asked if they really needed all these formalities, and she asked to remind her when they became so close, because she didn't remember. The guest offered a couple of options to choose from, dear friend or trusted comrade. He was completely at a loss when he heard that she was in no mood to listen to bullying. He slowly asked again, and then said that he had always been sincere with her. Suddenly, an image of her from the distant past appeared before his mind's eye. Therefore, he answered that from the very moment he saw her for the first time, and until now. Satin had taken him by surprise with her question, which was why he had come to her so suddenly. And he was brought here by rumors about Jorn and everything else that was happening now. Having said this, He asked if perhaps he could help in any way. He continued that this marriage was complete absurdity and how dare that bastard Jorn. These were the words she wanted to hear, but didn't expect them to come from him. However, she had already decided that she would go to this ridiculous wedding because she was Delmari's daughter. And so the day of the celebration arrived. The invited guests gathered in the main temple. Those gathered were discussing the latest gossip with gusto. But this is not surprising. After all, it all happened right before the wedding. Apparently, the groom is crazy about his mistress. Someone complained that they could have met more discreetly to protect the bride. Every bride in the world dreams of being the brightest star and shining on this day. Decorate the hall as you wish, and of course, wear your most beautiful dress, standing before the cardinal to exchange vows and have the perfect wedding. This dream was becoming a reality, but to Satin's horror, it became the path to hell. A quiet, perfect path, without a single clap, was laid out before her. Even the whispers of the guests sounded like mockery. This ominous silence was killing her. Every step that brought her closer to the altar echoed with pain in her tormented soul. All she wanted now was to just run away, as far away from here as possible. But feeling her responsibility to her family, to herself, she simply could not. She couldn't even be angry now, and she thought, he found the courage in himself to save a girl from violence, but now he is cowardly under pressure from his family. She thought about how he had fallen in her eyes, and then a familiar voice caught her attention. Someone else recognized the timbre, so he apologized for interrupting the ceremony. This interested party was very interested in who exactly was singing the anthem. When he pulled back the curtain, everyone gathered saw the prima of the Bolshoi Theater. Our heroine realized with horror that her groom's mistress was singing at her wedding. It was simply unthinkable that Delilah would sing her wedding hymn. A whisper spread through the hall. Isn't this the same singer that everyone's been rumored about? The guests were shocked that the groom dared to invite his mistress to the wedding. Deciding that there was a misunderstanding, Satan decided to figure out what was going on. So asked Jorn what's going on and why Delilah is singing the wedding anthem. He replied that he asked her the day he hurt his leg and thought she would like it. That Satine always dreamed of the perfect wedding, and who would sing better than the prima. Moreover, she liked the performance, so he tried to negotiate. It was an incredibly shameless question, so our heroine was indignant. She asked him to honestly admit that even now his thoughts were occupied only with Delilah. She continued that he doesn't even look at her, the bride, but only looks at the singer. She asked if he couldn't hear the guests' whispers, and declared that he had arranged the worst wedding. The priest considered that everyone was gathered, and the wedding ceremony could begin. Watching the groom, Satin realized that he could not take his eyes off Delilah. I mentally asked him to forget about the wedding vows and tell everyone the truth, that he wanted to marry that woman, and he began to pronounce the words of the oath. He swore that he would respect his only wife and love her for the rest of his life. Having sworn fidelity to his bride, he did not take his eyes off his mistress. Everyone present in the hall knew to whom this oath was actually given. Satin couldn't understand what he was thinking when he said those words so easily. When it was her turn to take the oath, she thought of a cruel contradiction. He did not show her respect during the wedding, and she refused to say her vows. Voices were heard in the hall. Did she really say that she couldn't marry him? The bride's family had reason to be angry. A scandal broke out right before the wedding. When Jorn asked the question, she thought he looked at her now. Another thing is that it was an impulsive statement, but not entirely thoughtless. If the scandal had developed further, and there had been more secret meetings between them, then it could be presented as love through social inequality. But under these circumstances, she was the true victim now. Satin loudly declared that she could not make false oaths before a representative of God. And how can she say vows when she knows that in his heart there is another? She realized that with such an open admission, the ties between families were broken. However, Jorn considered this step to be ill-considered and, moreover, unfounded. So I suggested that they talk to each other immediately after the ceremony. Satin replied that he was too blinded by that woman, and she was an empty sound to him. Then she asked how long he was going to hide his relationship with Delilah, and what will change if he continues to avoid sincerely admitting his guilt. Jorn made another attempt to convince the bride to continue the wedding, but he was stopped by Sir Cardillon's words that she was right. To promise to spend your whole life with someone while loving another, and isn't that a deception of those present? Rubler added that, first of all, Jorn himself will regret his choice. Then, he suddenly got down on one knee and said he had a proposal. And he said that he hoped that she would take the hand of the man she truly loved. At that moment, Satine Del Mare completely stopped understanding what was happening. Our heroine was a friend who was always there for Jorn, closer than family. The thought of marrying anyone other than her never crossed his mind. And even when he helped Delilah, he thought that Satin would also understand his actions. No matter how much he explained, she only became more angry, and then she broke off the engagement. Everyone, without exception, treated him like a pathetic fool obsessed with a woman. The only one who hugged him when he was suffering in silence was Delilah. She said that if she broke up the marriage, she would not be able to look Lady Satine in the eyes. She asked him not to worry about her. He would still forever remain her savior. How could he not fall in love with such a sweet and kind girl? So he made a false oath. The marriage of aristocrats is not only their personal matter. For the sake of two families, this could not be cancelled. Del Mare would get a son-in-law, and he would be able to keep his promise to protect Satine. He would like to run to Delilah after the wedding and whisper in her ear that everything is fine. It should have been like this, but in reality, everything happened completely differently. Just before his eyes, Sir Cardillon asked his fiancée to marry him. The guests, so as not to miss anything important, discussed what was happening in whispers. Everyone was wondering if not only the groom, but also the bride had a secret lover. Rubler said that the thought of her marrying someone else when she has him, he was going to quietly step aside after hearing her say that it was for the sake of the family's promise. But now that things have turned out this way, he can no longer just stand and watch, and that this is a marriage that she will still have to enter into with someone for the sake of the family. Satin asked in amazement, was he crazy to behave like that at someone else's wedding? To which he calmly replied that if he accepted it, it would become their wedding. However, even in this confusing situation, her mind continued to work like clockwork. The wedding is suddenly interrupted, and the union between Del Mare and Salvio is destroyed. The breakdown of marriage between the guardian families will clearly not end peacefully and will reach the temple. And the temple will not be pleased with the scandalous discord between the guardian families. Therefore, he will put pressure on her in every possible way to convince her. She may be a victim now, but over time this impression will fade. Rubler, who claimed to be her secret lover, appeared completely unexpectedly. But if she marries him, she will get rid of the problems associated with the temple. People whispered that despite her lover being a paladin, she prioritized the engagement over her family. And then, in comparison to this, aren't Salvio a bit too selfish? Satin guessed that Rubler had lied to provoke such a reaction from people. He meanwhile said that because of this, the two families would become enemies overnight. But on the other hand, Jorn will live happily with his mistress, and the Prima's reputation will grow, leading to even greater success in the future. Then, Satin asked what he got out of helping her in this situation. Smiling sincerely, he replied that he would marry her, and that was all he needed. After listening to his answer, I came to the conclusion that I didn't know what he was thinking at all. Our heroine's future depended on the decision she made now, so I mentally weighed all the pros and cons if she took that hand now. Del Mare joins the Cardillon family, which ranks above the other guardians. Even among the guardian families, the Cardillons are on a whole other level, and if they unite with them, then her parents will certainly be happy. But what about Rubler himself? He doesn't have to sacrifice himself for his family. She still didn't understand whether he was truly happy with just being married to her. Rubler guessed the course of her thoughts and asked her not to think too much. He said that looking at this room, he could tell how much effort she had put in, that she had done enough, and suggested that she do what she wants and be selfish. He told her exactly the words she wanted to hear most. After all, no matter what she does now, it couldn't be any worse than it is now. Holding out her hand to him, she said that she agreed, and he approved of her decision. They heard the cardinal say that it seemed like everyone had found their partners. After clearing his throat, he added that then the wedding ceremony could begin. Addressing Rubler Cardillon, the priest asked whether he would take his oath. Having received the promise, the cardinal asked our heroine for the words of the oath. Giving my consent, I thought that the same question, but I don't feel bad. The cardinal asked the bride and groom to seal their vows with a kiss. She thought that sleeping with his best friend would be a big blow. Somehow, everything happened just as her maid said. Rubler, meanwhile, said that he promised her that he would never betray her and make sure that she doesn't regret her choice for a single day. Satin thought that because of Jorn and Delilah's deception, her fiancé had changed. that it was a crazy wedding where nothing remained but lies. However, the warmth she felt during the kiss was real. The news that the bride and groom were in love with other people spread throughout the capital. They said that there was a substitution at the ceremony. It was simply an incredible wedding. And also that one of the main figures in this scandal is the bride herself, Lady Satine. The next day, our heroine diligently tried to escape from reality. She tried to throw away all thoughts about the wedding and not even remember it. But the maid, with her questions, inadvertently reminded us again of what had happened. Larry wondered what she should call her mistress after marriage. Her essentially simple questions stirred up memories, which Satine so diligently tried to hide in the farthest corner of her memory. However, the fact remained that she really did marry Rubler Cardillon. She didn't understand what came over her, even if it was urgent, why she did it. How I married a man I hadn't spoken to since graduating from the academy. Even then, he teased and irritated her, and even stupid Jorn was worried about her. She remembered Jorn so easily. Perhaps time really does connect. The man she trusted betrayed her. Rubler could be the same. But no matter how much she tore her hair out, the wedding still took place. I thought that the spilled water wouldn't be collected anyway, but at least it could be cleaned up. So she came across a code of laws, a book that contained the answers she needed. Rubler was not at home anyway. After the ceremony, he was dragged away to family affairs and temples. She hoped that not all was lost, and that she could find some way out. Meanwhile, our newlywed had a 2-month business trip planned. He had to visit the diocese as a representative of His Holiness, and there was no need to inform him in advance that he was getting married. The interlocutor promised to make sure that he got a vacation afterwards. Then, he told how their dear paladin burst into the wedding and pushed the groom away. And finally, he took the woman he loved, so of course he deserved a vacation. Our hero noted to himself that his interlocutor was still the same as before. It was the eldest son of the current Pope Dionysius III, Archbishop Kyrion. Since he had not yet been chosen by the divine oracle, he was only an archbishop. However, people were betting that Kyrion would become the next pope. The oracle will definitely choose Kyrion, and then Rubler will become his sword. When they first met, it seemed like Kyrion had already foreseen this. He was the first to extend his hand and said that he wanted to be a friend, not a master. No joke could offend. They were such close friends. The priest said when they first met, Rubler was like an untamable horse, that he didn't know about the romantic side, and he's curious how he was able to win her over, because her eyes became razor-sharp every time she saw him. Kyrion continued that if she thought about it, she could very well have fallen in love with Rubler. With such a face and a body waiting for one woman without a single affair, this is devotion. Tired of his friend's jokes, Rubler said he might file a harassment complaint. Switching to a serious tone, Kyrion said that he needed to remain in the Holy See, that His Holiness is not feeling well, and his energy is not what it used to be, that no one can defeat time, and it is necessary to start preparing as soon as possible. Rubler asked if he could also stay with the Holy See after the trip. The answer was that it was not his job. He could enjoy his honeymoon, but Kyrion was interested. He heard that the Prima also came to the wedding. People kept talking about her, and he became curious if she was really that amazing. The Archbishop asked if she was really as amazing as the rumors said. Trying to judge her impartially, Rubler recalled his impression. He did not evaluate her talents, but as a person, he said that she was an intelligent and dangerous woman. Adding that she was a bit of a flirt, he advised her not to be interested in her, as it would not end well. It was new for Kyrion to hear Rubler call someone dangerous. The forwarding bouquet asked to consider this a small thank you for the information. When asked what the flowers were, the Archbishop replied that they were a wedding gift for the bride. Seeing the reaction, he added that his friend didn't want to receive flowers from another man. Continuing in the same joking tone, he asked if he was head over heels in love. And although they had been friends since childhood, Rubler did not share everything with him. How could he tell about the impression this girl made on him? But now he said that Satine was charming from the very first time they met. Kyrion said that it must be a joy to make an oath to such a sweet girl. Rubler was so happy that he didn't want to part with her for a second. In high spirits, he hurried to his wife. And even a quick separation did not change anything. But our hero could not have expected such an unexpected meeting. Her words that he came at the right time, and let's get a divorce, stunned him. Like a true knight, he suggested drinking tea and talking in a calm atmosphere. I offered her some milk for her tea, but she replied that it wasn't worth it. she doesn't drink it. When he said he didn't know about it, I thought that of course he couldn't have known. That he is the reason why she can't even look at milk. Our heroine didn't often recall her years spent at the academy, but it was that day and that chance encounter that remained etched in her memory for many years. She was terribly late for the lecture and ran down the corridor without looking where she was going. Satin then thought that this man was definitely Rubler Cardillon. They said he was a genius swordsman, and when you saw him up close, you felt the pressure. That time, he said that she was so small that it was hard to see her, like a shorty. That was the first time he called her shorty, and that was her first impression of him. From that day on, every time they met, he only called her by that nickname. When I met her at the canteen, I said that she needed to drink a lot of milk to grow up. Satin already had a complex about her short stature, and as a result, she began to avoid Rubler. Now, when she sees milk, she remembers his face when he teased her. His question brought her out of her stupor. He asked if she wanted a divorce, and she replied that she had read it, and there were some really good things in that book. In their case, there are some conditions. The young people are given 3 months. Then the mandatory reflection period ends, and you can file for divorce. It's true that there is still the process of agreement and division of property. Everything is a bit complicated. But in any case, it will take at least 3 months, so they have time. He helped her during the wedding, so now it's her turn to do everything she can. Rubler said he missed her so much that he came back as soon as he finished work. And he was offended to see such a reaction from her. She asked, "Isn't it obvious?" Trying not to show his disappointment, he said that he didn't understand what was obvious to her. Then he asked why they couldn't be spouses and live together. He was extremely surprised by her question, as he didn't need the Delmar surname. And she explained that the purpose of this marriage was to unite the two guardian families. And not only does he not need a last name, but he also hates it. Rubler did not let him finish. When he asked her in what sense he hated her, she replied that he always made fun of her, and let him not tell her that he doesn't remember how he treated her at the academy. He asked what she meant, that he married her only because of their families. Satin replied that, for her at least, that was the only meaning of marriage, that at the moment of her birth, the person with whom she would spend her entire life was chosen. That's why she believed and relied only on Jorn for all her 20 years of life. But love intervened in a marriage concluded solely for the sake of family harmony. She added that the divorce announcement would be as loud as the wedding itself. But he doesn't want to spend the rest of his life with a man he can't trust, and she wants to choose the person with whom she will happily spend the rest of her life. When she finished, she asked if this was sufficient reason for him to agree to a divorce. Our hero replied that now that he knew what she wanted, he would think about it. After listening to her gratitude, he said that that was not all. He had one more piece of news, that by order of His Holiness, tomorrow he is leaving on a business trip for 2 months. Having suggested that she discuss the matter after his appeal, he handed her the bouquet. Having wished him a good trip, I wondered why he was giving flowers at such a moment. Rubler asked her to remember the past. Her memories are slightly different from his. In the morning he left, and she was left alone to live in the newlyweds' house without her husband. Gradually, our heroine got used to her family life in a quiet estate. It was then that her parents asked her to come, and she could not refuse. So, reluctantly, I got ready and went to the Delmar family estate. On the way, she felt very sick, and thinking about it, she realized that this road was a burden for her. But she hadn't been to her parents for a long time, so she felt awkward in front of them. She guessed that they would sit and ask her about Rubler all day. She felt a pang of conscience, because she was going to divorce him soon. She felt sorry for her parents, but she did not intend to live an unhappy life. Her current home is located in a suburban area, away from the hustle and bustle of the outside world. Having lived every day in peace and quiet, that life seemed quite pleasant to her. She wondered if she would have to return to the estate if she got divorced. After thinking about it, I realized that it would be better to just move out of the newlyweds' house. Her parents' estate seemed strangely unfamiliar to her after her long absence. After all, it seems like just recently she was a member of this family, and now she is a guest. For a few seconds, she felt as if only a few days had passed. How I told my parents that I didn't want to get married and remembered their faces. They were preoccupied with their relationship with Selvio, but now they greeted him with a smile. Father said that he called her today only to give this to her. Our heroine was well aware of what was kept in the box. It was a sacred relic of the House of Delmare, a piece of the Holy Blade. The father was surprised by his daughter's reaction, because she should have expected it. The relic looked like a useless piece of metal, but Satin knew its history and meaning. It symbolized the foundation of the state and was proof of divine revelation. Our heroine asked why they were giving her this family heirloom now. The parents replied that now was the time for this, since she was married. The mother asked her to keep it and give it to her child one day. But her thoughts lately had been occupied with something completely different. Not children. For a moment, she even imagined what it might look like. Since she didn't intend to let things get to that point, she said it was too early, to which her father said that she should focus on giving birth to an heir and the continuation of their family line, especially since their bloodline is rarer than that of other nobles. So he was worried. But now that Sir Cardillon became a son-in-law, he calmed down. He added that he was confident that they would have a healthy child who would take after him. Without saying anything about her intentions to divorce, she accepted the relic and left. Her parents were so happy and full of anticipation that she could not say a word. And if Rubler heard them talking about their grandchildren, he would tease her for hours. Then, I thought that he had apparently come to terms with the idea of divorce to some extent. So it would be better to come with him and tell them when he returns. She continued to hope that everything would be okay, and everything would go according to plan. But when this relic was before her eyes, Satin was overcome with doubts. Our hero, meanwhile, continued his assigned mission somewhere in the provinces. He was greeted by the local archbishop with words of greeting after a long journey. He was glad to see the paladin and congratulated him on the recent important event. After all, rumors about Cardillon's wedding spread throughout the country faster than the wind. He added that Del Mare is famous for his deep devotion to the Pope and his sense of duty, and this is a wonderful union of young aristocrats from such virtuous families. However, Rubler knew that society perceived their marriage in a somewhat different light. The priest said he always hoped the guardians would cooperate, and now that the two families are connected by marriage, he feels relieved. The paladin guessed that something was bothering the archbishop, and he asked about it. He replied that here on the border, they encounter incomprehensible phenomena. What he suspects is that this may be the work of evil spirits serving the devil. Rubler heard that when the devil was sealed, most of these spirits disappeared. But few managed to escape, and if the archbishop told, it means something is happening. Afterwards, the priest offered to accompany him to a room to rest. Left alone with my thoughts, I thought that evil spirits had begun to act. This meant that he wouldn't be returning home anytime soon, which wasn't such a bad thing. Although he was depressed by the thought that the later he returned, the happier Satine would be. After all, she probably thinks that when he appears, she will be freed from this marriage. But things won't go the way she wants. He won't miss this chance so easily. Every time I thought about her, I remembered her most charming version. The first thing he learned about them was that she had been engaged while still in the cradle, when his classmates were discussing a couple who always stuck together. Having become curious about who they were talking about, I found out that it was Del Mare and Selvio. He thought then that they were both pale and small, like a squirrel and a rabbit. When he first met these children, he didn't attach much importance to it. But one day everything changed. It was the cold season, and everyone was coughing. Satin was worried about Jorn, who was coughing badly, and offered him a lollipop. Rubler thought that these two were inseparable. It seemed to him that the girl was older. Watching her take care of the boy, our hero suddenly started coughing too. The next moment, he was surprised to find a small lollipop on his desk. He didn't expect anything, and didn't ask for anything, but this act touched the depths of the soul. They didn't even talk to each other back then. They just studied in the same class. But little Satin, without even turning around, handed him a lollipop. It was a small, silent gesture that somehow calmed him. The toffee she gave him was so sweet that it almost made him dizzy. Over the years, this moment turned into a tender melancholy that did not allow me to forget about it. And even after more than 10 years, he could still taste that caramel. With a longing in his chest, he realized that he missed her. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. The knight reported that they had discovered something suspicious while patrolling. Afterwards, he added with concern that it would be better for the commander to check everything himself on the spot. Alarmed crows circled around, their cries echoing across the dark sky. Their torn-to-pieces brothers lay nearby, scattered across the ground, like lingering memories of a battle, creating an atmosphere of unrest. After some time, screams echoed through the newlyweds' quiet estate. Larry ran full speed down the corridors to tell her mistress the news. Out of breath, she burst into the living room and was glad to find my lady. When Satin asked what happened, she replied that they raised the flag on the city wall. The lady didn't react, so she explained that the holy knights were returning. Only then did the meaning of these words begin to dawn on our heroine. Larry said that 2.5 months had already passed since the poisoning on the expedition. She was so used to a quiet and measured life that she lost track of time. But Rubler had already returned, and she was completely unprepared to meet him. The maid asked if she could prepare a warm bath. It would help her relax. Having agreed, she thought. As expected, only the maid understood her. After changing, Satine looked at her reflection for a long time and tried to figure it out. All she could come up with was how mercilessly she had been deceived. The maid was bustling about nearby, and our heroine asked what kind of thing it was. When the girl understood what the mistress was asking about, she answered that it was a nightgown. Asking who sleeps in something like that, Satin added that it is transparent. When she threw down the robe that was handed to her, she noted with surprise that it was also see-through, and she asked the maid why they were bringing her things that she would never wear. In response, I heard that the paladin had returned, and there was no faster way to get closer. When Satin demanded that she take it away, Larry was upset, because she had taken a long time to choose, and she quietly muttered that if the lady didn't like it, nothing could be done. She added a little louder that maybe she didn't know something and was going too far. But my lord does not seem like a bad person to her at all, and Satine replied that she knew. Then she continued the thought that she also does not think that Rubler is a bad person. After a short silence, she explained that they had simply had a difficult relationship since childhood. I felt a little chilly, probably because the fabric was too thin. Deciding it was best to go to the bedroom, she loudly told Larry that she would go with her. Our heroine became so relaxed, living without her husband, that she completely forgot about him, and he was just going to the bathroom to wash off the road dust. This meeting came as a surprise to both of them, and they both froze. She wondered why he was here, since he said he would stop by the temple first. Had he already submitted his report? And in the meantime, he had managed to recover from the shock? And he said slyly that he thought she was a little girl, both outside and inside. He couldn't take his eyes off her, and then asked what kind of outfit she was wearing. Satan was so stunned by his appearance that she did not immediately understand the question. Then she remembered what outfit she was wearing, and the color quickly flooded her entire face. She was so embarrassed that for a few seconds she was completely at a loss. She slammed the door in his face and shouted that it was not what it seemed. Finding himself in front of a closed door, our hero tried to understand what had just happened. Satin tried to do the same, only on the other side of the door. I thought, he saw everything. What a pervert. And what is this intent gaze? Then I imagined Rubler asking, "Satin, were you waiting for me in such an outfit?" And then to add, "How sweet. Then I suppose I should live up to your expectations." I thought, whatever he was thinking, they met at the most inopportune time. Deciding that she would throw the divorce papers right in his face, she began to open the door. She had no other choice anyway, only hope that he had already left. But he wanted to know how this situation would be resolved, so he decided to wait for it. Having called her by her nickname again, Shorty, he realized his mistake and thought about it. He felt awkward too, and said that he probably wouldn't be able to call her that anymore. The next day, she burst into the office and immediately announced that 3 months had passed, that she had already listed the reasons, so all he had to do was sign. He replied that yesterday she was so brave that he thought she wouldn't get divorced. After repeating that a mistake had occurred yesterday, she said that she had pointed out the differences in personalities. Since this reason is the most neutral, Rubler replied that everything is correct. Then he continued and said that he had said that he understood, but he did not agree to a divorce. Rubler further asked, in addition, about personality differences as a reason. Did they even spend enough time together to say that? He went on a business trip right after the wedding, and they barely exchanged a few words. Moreover, if she submits documents immediately after a long business trip, he thinks that the Pope would rather personally act as a mediator than agree. Then our heroine thought, she can't write down her true feelings about her family, the temple, her annoying husband who teases her all day. She suddenly said that their only legitimate reason for divorce was intimacy. Satin explained that they weren't even a loving couple, but practically strangers. And how is intimacy possible between them? And then this is a problem between spouses. She thought he had nothing to say, but he asked if she was willing to try. However, our heroine was not ready for such a frank question. Moreover, she was confused when Rubler suddenly appeared right next to her. Then he said, "Let's try and see if it really is impossible." Approaching her, he said whether they could touch each other or not. His face was so close that Satan was scared, not knowing what to expect. Her nerves were on edge, and she frantically tried to figure out how to get out of it. She blurted out the first thing that came to mind, that it seemed Larry had called her. Laughing nervously, she added that she would go and check in case something happened. With a somewhat theatrical wave of her hand, she said that they would definitely talk later. So the days passed, but she could no longer move calmly around the house. Rubler has never left the estate since his return, but she simply didn't have the courage to meet him and behave normally. Not knowing what to say, she asked when the Order of Knights would begin to work. Without answering the question, he said that it had been difficult to see her lately. She said she hadn't noticed, and asked if he could step aside because she was going to the bathroom. She tried to act natural, but flinched when he chuckled. Then I heard that the bathroom was in the opposite direction, that she had been living in this house for 3 months already, and still hadn't remembered where the bathroom was. Then she replied that everything was correct, that she had topographic cretinism. He smiled and said that it was the first time he had heard of it, but even that part of her was very sweet. Satin thought that it was all useless, no matter what his reaction said, always the same. Then he said that he forgot to tell her something. He was given leave. Our heroine was just about to take her leave, but this news stopped her. She asked why so suddenly. He also asked why she was so surprised. He also asked if she could guess why he would take an unplanned vacation, but she absolutely did not want to guess, or even think about his vacation. The maid asked if the mistress had specified how many days the paladin would be on vacation. Having answered negatively, she added that she would rest a little and return when she was ready. However, Larry insisted that the young lady should have asked anyway. Even if they were in a fake relationship, they are now a married couple, and you need to start having conversations to get closer, and not deliberately avoid them. Satin asked the question thoughtfully, because they needed to keep their distance. Larry gathered her courage and said that she still hated Mr. Jorn. She continued that the lady had always been cautious, but was not so closed and cold. That she was always the kind of person who looked good with a bright smile and happiness in her eyes. However, after such a vile betrayal, Mr. Jorn changed. Now, it's true, everything has changed for the better, but she's still upset. Satin was sad because, being next to her, Larry was also sad. And she was right. It was a big shock when Jorn betrayed her out of love. But what kind of love is this that makes a person blind and deaf? Our heroine didn't know what this feeling was, and perhaps she was not destined to understand it. Larry wished the lady a happy married life, and for Jorn to understand what he had lost. Understanding the maid's worries, she shared that she didn't particularly trust Cardillon either. She said that she thought she knew Jorn better than anyone, because they had been together for so many years. But even Mr. Selvio's heart turned to another in an instant. Just like Jorn's heart, Cardillon's heart may also change one day. Our heroine continued, no matter how you look at it, but it was an extremely impulsive marriage. She also said that as soon as everything calms down, she plans to quietly get a divorce. Then, Larry offered to bring the lady some tea to lift her spirits. Having asked for some herbal tea, I thought of the phrase to live happily as a married couple. She looked at her family's sacred relic and thought, this is complicated. Hearing a knock, she allowed the maid to come in and again became immersed in her thoughts. Without looking up, she asked Larry to put the tea on that table, but she shuddered when a familiar voice said that this was apparently a Del Mare family heirloom. Standing next to them, he said that every Del Mar family recognized him as a son-in-law. She was indignant that he burst into the bedroom. He retorted that the husband was allowed. Rubler even added that he knocked properly, but Satine was not satisfied with the answer, and she said that they were getting divorced soon, so they should keep their distance. He asked again, so she had been avoiding him all this time to keep her distance. Felt like she mumbled something when she was a kid because they were getting divorced. A little angry at her stubbornness, Rubler asked, what if they don't get divorced? And if he doesn't give her a divorce, then there is no need for this stupid distance. He continued by saying that he had been repeating that he had wanted to marry her for a long time. He wants to make her love him and wants to spend the rest of their lives together. This is the kind of marriage he talked about, and then asked why she continued to reject him. He talked about how she always plans for a future that hasn't happened yet. Then she tries to fit into his framework, and if this marriage seems meaningless to her, then he asks her not to make this marriage just as meaningless in his eyes. Rubler quietly said that it hurt him a lot every time she did this. He is a capable knight, and when it comes to pursuing and capturing, he has no equal. Changing his tone a little, he added, "Let's see who wins this game of catch-up." Seeing the fear of a hunted hare in her eyes, I realized that it was time to finish for today. But still, as he was leaving, he gave her some advice not to take his words as a joke. He wanted to win her over, not scare her. So he bid her good night affectionately. Her heart was pounding, and her thoughts were racing. She didn't know how to feel about it. She considered him selfish, arrogant, and above all, hated her. A moment came to mind that made her remember Rubler exactly like that. It was a fencing tournament held at the academy where they studied. It was an opportunity to watch students from the Guardian families compete. However, Jorn was still a beginner in fencing, and it was obvious that he would lose. He was nervous because he himself understood perfectly well that his chances were slim. Satin advised not to worry about it, but to simply lose with dignity. There was one fact she had overlooked in her attempt to console herself: the weight of Selvio's name. Among the students of the same year participating in the tournament, there were many more experienced ones. Jorn allowed himself to be impaled, pinned, and punched before giving in. A completely different situation occurred in the fights in which Rubler participated. There was no need to follow the tournament. The shouts in the stands spoke for themselves. The news that Rubler and Jorn had reached the final drew a full house. Rubler, who made it to the finals solely on the strength of his skills, and his opponent, Jorn, who reached the finals under the name of the Guardian family. The meeting of these two families gave the tournament a significance beyond its own. Satine thought that Jorn was already having a hard time, but now he would be completely defeated. The only thing they could hope for that day was Rubler's chivalry. The importance of a fencing tournament lies solely in the learning process. Insulting the enemy was forbidden, and moreover, they usually got along well. She hoped that two of the Guardian families would have a joust. Taking a seat on the stands, Satan enthusiastically began to encourage Jorn. She shouted to him that she believed in him and that he needed to try not to worry too much. Young Cardillon also heard her words, and it was they that decided the outcome of the duel. The call was made to begin the match, and the result exceeded all of Satan's expectations. She barely heard someone nearby express surprise that this was the one with the makings of a paladin, and also the words that he treats Selvio like a toy, and it would be better to finish. Jorn Selvio lost, the eventual winner of the Rubler Cardillon tournament. Our heroine had a hard time making her way through the crowd of students leaving the match. She was unable to find Jorn quickly and had to waste a lot of time. She said that everything was fine, he tried, so there was no need to be upset. He looked completely inconsolable, and she wanted to distract him from fencing. That's why I suggested that he go to the festival, since I had heard about so many stalls. Unable to contain his emotions at the loss, he shouted that the match was a bad idea. And how could a newbie like him hope to defeat someone so experienced? He continued that everyone was probably laughing at him, and he should have given up after all. Satin replied that she was glad that he did not give up and fought to the end, and that those who laughed were fools. Realizing he was wrong, Jorn apologized for taking his frustration out on her. She didn't want to upset him even more, so she said she was fine. At that moment, Rubler passed by, and she noticed that he didn't even say hello. She thought it was mean, and she was a fool to expect chivalry from such a man. And then our heroine promised herself that she would definitely take revenge for this humiliation. Surprisingly, the chance for revenge presented itself much earlier than she expected. The next day, there was a ball at the academy, and Cardillon also came to it. Moreover, he invited her to dance, and they found themselves partners on the dance floor. He wanted to talk to her, but she began to put her plan into action. She had already stepped on his foot several times, but he pretended that nothing had happened. His reaction made her even more angry. Satin didn't understand why he was smiling. I only understood that Rubler was skillfully pretending that he wasn't in pain. Getting even more angry, she thought she would see how much longer she could stand it. She was almost walking on his legs, but the desired reaction still did not follow. I wondered how he could not utter a squeak, that he did not feel pain. She was curious how long this could go on, when he would give in, and she became so carried away by this process that she stumbled and began to lose her balance. I even imagined how she would now be sprawled out in the middle of the hall in front of everyone. But something happened that I never expected. Rubler deftly caught me and saved me from falling. After this dance, Cardillon left the dance hall as if nothing had happened. A few days later, she learned from rumors that he had not danced with anyone but her, and our heroine felt a little remorse for her boorish behavior. Rubler interrupted his vacation to meet with the Archbishop and discuss the report. The first thing Kirian asked his friend was how he spent time with his young wife. And although our hero expected such a question, he did not come up with an intelligible answer. Kirian joked, "They weren't 12. They weren't playing daughters and mothers." Having learned that there was nothing special, he was very upset. He wanted some spicy details. Rubler insisted that 3 days was too little time for anything special to happen. The friend replied that when he was younger, he was more charming than he is now. However, our hero considered this to be debauchery, and Kirian did not agree with this opinion. Then he said that he and his wife only look like adults, but inside they are still immature. The Archbishop changed the subject to the report and asked if the information about the evil spirit was true. If anyone other than Rubler had presented such a report, he would have been laughed at. Moreover, the moment for such ominous rumors to spread is too convenient. It's just before the country's founding day, and something like this can't be ignored. Noting that Kirian had been reading documents all night again, he advised him to get some rest. The Archbishop replied that since Rub was here, he could take a short break. But our hero did not offer to help, but simply asked again not to overdo it. And as if by chance, he asked how Rub's relationship was with the young master Selvio. After all, as he believes, after the chaos at the wedding, his friend doesn't even see him anymore. Rubler smiled and replied that Jorn was his benefactor, since he had let Satin go. After the chaos at the wedding, Selvio inadvertently benefited from Rubler's actions, because our hero diverted attention from a scandal that could have been fatal. In Vio's village, those who found themselves in a hopeless situation were able to avoid public condemnation. He didn't say anything, but he was angry that Satin had suffered greatly in this process. I asked why Kirian even started talking about Jorn, and it was about the invitations, which were sent out, and no family will refuse, so will Jorn. They cannot allow friction between families at such a significant event. And he thought that he could act as a mediator, as an archbishop. But Rubler refused. Kirian asked if it would be possible to invite that scandalous prima to the event, because he excluded her from the performance due to Rubler's relationship with his wife and Delilah. But it would be better if she participated when the opportunity arises again. Our hero coldly replied that he had already said that he was not interested in this woman. When the priest replied that he would do so, Rubler breathed a sigh of relief. Kirian added that the day will finally come when he will meet his wife in person. Invitations to the founding day were sent out, and our heroine received that too. She knew it would happen, but she didn't want to go. But she didn't know how to avoid it. A ceremony in honor of the legend of the founding of the country, where 5 holy relics appeared. Guardian families and high-ranking nobles are invited to this event. There has never been a single time when our heroines have missed this annual event. This means that most of the guests who came to the wedding will gather there as well. Of course, Jorn would be there, and if she went, she would inevitably run into him. When the 3 of them are in one place, people will remember the scandalous wedding. Thus, this event could easily reignite the dying scandal, and they would have to pretend to be a married couple. She didn't know if she could cope. An image of Rubler asking her a tricky question appeared before her mind's eye. Maybe they should check whether they can touch each other or not. These memories seemed so real to her that she screamed in horror. Realizing that she had accidentally frightened the maid, she asked for forgiveness and a cup of tea. Even after realizing that these were just memories, she couldn't calm down. The memories of him were vivid, and his intense gaze gave me goosebumps. All he did was look at her, but she still couldn't move. She couldn't forget how he gently touched her lips, meeting her eyes. The words that he wants to touch her. It's so strange that he wants her so much. She thought that, fortunately, from that day on, Rubler no longer approached her. When his furious pursuit disappeared, his calm demeanor became even more alarming. She couldn't stop remembering those rough hands that touched her lips, his dark blue eyes, which were etched into her memory like shards of glass, how she behaved around him all this time, and what kind of face she showed him. But why think about meaningless things? She needed to focus on work. She has been withdrawn for too long. It's time to get used to communication again. And to change the situation, Satan decided to go to Madame Xian's salon during the day. She had not seen many of the ladies since the day of her incredible wedding. Therefore, the first thing they talked about was their impressions of what had happened. When the conversation turned to the paladin making an offer, she suddenly wanted to go home. I might have done so, but I heard about the precarious situation of the Selvio family. The ladies wanted to interrupt the conversation so as not to embarrass Satan, but she was curious. From the story I learned that the Selvio family was looking for another bride, but everyone refused, explaining this by the fact that Jorn has a mistress with whom he has not ended the relationship. People speak badly about the prima donna herself because she ruined the wedding. Many singers were invited to the anniversary of the founding, but she was the only one who remained on the sidelines. The lady added that the prima would not last long, either as a singer or as Jorn's lover. Satan thought that at least she wouldn't have to run into Delilah at the ceremony. Lady Eckley approached our heroine and said that she had something to share. She's not sure if she should tell, but since my lady is no longer in that family, seeing her uncertainty, Satan asked her to continue since they were talking about the Selvio family. However, her interlocutor shared with her an unpleasant story about Jorna's mistress. It had been raining for 3 days now, and Larry said sadly that it just wouldn't stop. You can't even go into the garden, and they say the damage from the storm is quite serious. The streets are flooded with dirty water, and the wind is so strong that no one goes outside. When the maid asked about the ceremony, Satine mentally wished for it to be cancelled. I remembered Rubler, who had more work to do due to the continuous downpour. The already busy nights had to deal with all the incidents related to the rain. Because of their strained relationship, her only relief was his busy schedule. Larry said that my lady need not worry. The paladin promised to return today. Not wanting to admit her feelings, Milady replied that she had not thought about it. The maid replied that the mistress spent a long time looking out the window and watching the servants enter, and this clearly indicates that she is waiting for the return of her dear husband. Satin was indignant that everything was not like that at all. She was just worried about the bad weather. Suddenly something happened and I caught myself really worrying, and she realized that no matter how much she hid it from herself and from others, she was worried about Rubler. At that moment, the door swung open and our hero appeared, soaking wet. He said in surprise that he had never expected that Satine was still not in his chambers. Was she really waiting for him? Not finding what to answer, she asked if he was walking in the rain without an umbrella. Our hero reasonably replied that he could not carry it and save people at the same time. While she was drying his wet hair, he said that it was a strong and light rain, but Satine didn't let him finish, saying that even strong paladins could get sick. Rubler looked at her with wide eyes. So pleased was he by her unexpected concern, and she kept saying that she knew she was strong, but she still had to take care of herself. He saw a change in her attitude towards him and asked if she was so worried. Larry watched as her new husband enjoyed being cared for, and his wife welcomed her husband. However, the sound of his voice brought Satine back to reality, and she stopped helping him. And slightly embarrassed, she asked whether, with such rain, the ceremony would take place as planned. Guessing what she was getting at, he asked a counter-question. He wants it cancelled. Having answered in the affirmative, I asked him if he was enjoying all this. Rubler said he was looking forward to this day, even knowing that Jorn would be there. She didn't understand why, because they would start whispering again, and she even imagined what exactly. Understanding her anxiety, he told her to calm her down and said that she was no longer alone. And they are waiting because this is their first public appearance as husband and wife. He promised that he would be next to her and that not a single glance would disturb her. He asks her not to worry too much about this, but rather to trust him. And then the day came when the event to celebrate the founding was planned. Due to bad weather, the roads were badly damaged, and carriages got stuck in impassable mud. The coachman informed the gentlemen that they could not go any further, and that they would have to go on foot. It was then decided to lay out a cloth, so that guests could pass through without getting their clothes dirty. The event organizers called on everyone to remain calm and wait for a while. They asked us to wait our turn. The guardian families should go first. The door of Selvio's carriage opened. The young gentleman came out and hesitated slightly. After checking the path, he came back and said that it was slippery and that we should be careful. As the striking woman began to exit, a whisper could be heard among the guests, because it was Delilah, the one about whom rumors still circulated. It was heard that this woman dared to appear here when she was not invited. Someone responded that she was not formally banned. She was simply not invited to sing. And given Mr. Jorn's precarious position, is it wise to behave this way? They also said that she was so beautiful that she could drive a man crazy. One lady said in a dissatisfied tone that if she was Mr. Jorn's companion, then they will have to walk the same path that this commoner has soiled. Delilah thought how quickly the uninvited guest became the center of attention. She enjoyed these moments because she was an actress to the tips of her nails. But as soon as the paladin's arrival was announced, all attention turned towards him. The holy knights greeted their commander, expressing respect and loyalty. The arriving guests stopped and began to whisper among themselves, discussing what was happening. Delilah also looked at the paladin, and for a moment their eyes met. Cardillon, on his warhorse, rushed past the guests like a flash of lightning. Holding his wife tightly to him, he rushed on with a concentrated gaze. And even though Jorn was standing next to her now, Delilah felt a slight uncertainty. Rubler galloped through the assembled crowd, as if he were rushing to the battlefield rather than to a celebration. There were some remarks. You saw how he was holding his wife tightly in his arms. But they are still newlyweds, and all these unpleasant rumors will finally disappear. They were like a loving couple from a fairy tale. People couldn't help but compare them to another couple. One lady said loudly that the price of a moment of weakness seemed too high. As soon as our heroes arrived, the sun began to shine, brightly illuminating the papal courtyard. It was their first outing after the wedding, so they were the center of attention. Everyone watched their movements closely and immediately began to discuss them. Continuing to pretend that they were a loving couple, Satine quietly scolded her husband. She was learning how to ride a regular horse, not how to survive on a war horse. Rubler replied that he would never have let her fall, but they showed how close they were. Satin snapped back and said that there was no need to show off like that. However, he noted that even though Jorn was among those people, the guests gradually arrived, and our heroine suggested going inside. Continuing to pretend to be a loving wife, she tenderly took Cardillon's arm. They walked in silence for a while, and he became curious about why she had become so quiet. And he suddenly asked, she wasn't thinking about Jorn right now. He asked her not to forget what kind of man was next to her, and she was even a little taken aback. She explained that Jorn was just an old friend of hers, and that was why she was worried about him. She added that she was not worried about him at the moment, which made Rubler laugh. He was so amused that our heroine pulled him up and asked him not to play the fool. She then moved on to the painting. Her attention was drawn to a painting she saw every year, and she became interested. It was an image of a sacred object divided into 5 parts, and she asked if he also had the sacred relic of the Cardillons. When he asked if she was really interested in knowing, she replied that she was only a little interested. Rubler said that his family keeps the handle and base of the sacred relic. There is a reason why so many knights come from the Cardillon family, and it is that they are the only family that has a sword hilt. Satin said that in Delmar's case, the tip of the sword points to the wielder's intent. Her lineage, having received the blade that pierced the demon's heart, was named Del Mare of Loyalty. Selvio, who received the central fragments, was a mediator. He was called Neutral. Looking at Rubler's face, she said that they were on opposite sides of the spectrum. He replied that the tip points to the owner's target, which is why he looks at it. He added that it seemed like it was predetermined from the moment he received the sword. Having gained her attention, he said that their fate was predetermined by their ancestors. Leaning towards her hand, he explained that at least he wanted to think so. Meeting her gaze, he added that he hoped she thought so too. The touch of his lips to her hand was so gentle that it sent shivers down her spine. A little later, our heroes entered the wedding hall, which turned out to be empty. Beautiful music was flowing through it, but for some reason, the guests had not yet arrived. The musicians, paying no attention to those who entered, continued their performance, saying that it was a strange year. Kyrian asked if they were their first guests, after adding that everything went wrong as soon as they entered the room. Kyrian, apologizing for being late, congratulated Mrs. Satin on her wedding. He then added an apology for not being able to attend the ceremony in person. He started talking about how he and Satine hadn't seen each other since their time at the academy, and since she was close to Rube, he could not help but notice her as his close friend. She couldn't remember being on good terms with Cardillon, and I remembered that Archbishop Kyrian had been a close friend of Rubler's for a long time, because he himself said that he was watching them, so no one would suspect anything. Just when she had calmed down about one thing, Jorn threw her another one. Having galloped past all the guests on her warhorse, she simply could not see anyone. She didn't understand why this woman was here. Jorn had forgotten where they were. A conversation with Lady Eclay in the salon came to mind. She told me about an incident, how I accidentally witnessed the prima arguing with her former patron. The one Jorn challenged to a duel, he shouted harsh words right on the street. That she is a famous actress. She fooled everyone, but do people know who she really is? Wasn't that her plan all along? And we'll see when the nasty mask falls off. Our heroine then asked Lady Eclay if the prima had simply listened to this. The answer was that Delilah laughed, and there was meaning in the patron's words too. That when she saw that expression on his face, a chill ran down her spine. Rumor has it that she is a pathetic woman under the influence of those in power, but she thinks that Delilah is not such a simple person and advised Satan to be careful. Rubler distracted her from her thoughts. He became worried, but she replied that everything was fine. He asked again because she looked so pale, as if she had seen a ghost. Without taking her eyes off her ghost, our heroine thought that it was very similar. She saw no point in hiding it from Rubler, so she said that Delilah was here. This is the first official event after the wedding, so there will be a lot of attention. She continued that it was really necessary for everyone to gather in one place, that she doesn't understand what Jorn is even thinking about when his family is looking for a wife for him. Rubler asked to stop worrying. He understands that it makes his head split. He decided to distract himself from these thoughts, so he asked her to look at him and smile. Then he explained that when she thinks so much, it reflects on her face. Therefore, it is better not to think about anything else, but just focus on it. He didn't want to reveal his plan to Satan, and he kissed her tenderly. Then he said that kissing a woman's hand is a sign of respect. He continued that a husband should respect his wife more than anyone else. What Jorn is watching, so they have to pretend that they love each other. But Satine didn't think it would work, because Jorn had known her for over 20 years. She said that no matter how much she pretended, he would immediately see through her game. Rubler was not bothered by this. He continued to insist that this was even for the best, because then they have a wonderful reason to make it real. And if Satan still had doubts, Rubler knew that it would not go unnoticed. He was absolutely right about that. Jorn's reaction was visible even to his companion. Delilah asked him if he was still worried about Satan, and even though the answer was no, she saw him continue to look. He had to joke that it was just interesting when the two became so close. He explained that Rube teased Satan as a child, and she took everything to heart. But since their relationship ended, it's perhaps funny that he talks about it. Then Jorn apologized for his behavior, because he should be paying attention to her. Having said that, he expected this, since he was not particularly favored. He asked if she was tired. Delilah replied that no, she really only needed one thing. Theatrically hugging him, she added that as long as he was nearby, nothing else mattered. He thanked her for staying by his side no matter what. He promised that he would protect her, no matter what happened to her, because he loved her so much. Jorn couldn't even imagine what Delilah was really thinking about right now. She thought about the man who had begged her to be his lover a year ago, and the other one imposed his perverted tastes on her, asking her to hit him at least once. I considered them to be just poor actors pretending to be aristocrats. On the outside, they pretend to love their wives, but behind the scenes, they often visit the theater. They begged and clung to her, wanting to touch her, but today, when they saw her beyond the theater curtains, their behavior changed. At first, it seemed to her that these men were only pretending not to know her, because they didn't want to become rivals to Jorn. But things turned out differently. Then Delilah realized that the reason was different. They didn't want to offend Satan, the only heir of the Delmar family, a young and elegant girl. And now she has got a husband from the Cardillon family who dares to insult her. Jorn talked about their bad relationship, but she didn't think the paladin was playing. In that brief moment when he was riding, their eyes met briefly, and he was extremely cold, as if he had no interest in such a woman. Delilah knew that a man like the paladin would hardly look in her direction, but still, the words that Jorn had spoken about their childhood did not give her peace. Although, on the other hand, can he really play with such tenderness in his gaze? She thought that if their relationship was suspicious, it might increase her chances. Delilah asked Jorn if it wasn't only lovers who kissed and had sex. This question stumped him, and he said that his parents had arrived. Jorn asked absent-mindedly if he could leave her alone to say hello to them. She let him go calmly and could now watch the others in silence. After all, the chances that anyone would approach her at this banquet were negligible. I noticed one person who didn't have to worry about the paladin and his wife. They were not acquainted, but Delilah assumed it was Archbishop Kyrian. For a second, she thought he looked at her, but then she dismissed the thought. Their gazes probably crossed by chance as he looked around the banquet hall. She was not allowed to answer the question. The man who approached asked. She came alone. She didn't even bother to answer, considering him too pathetic to waste her time. And since I never encountered him, apparently he lacked money and power. It seemed to her that he was trying to talk to her for some reason, as if he had the right. She reluctantly said that he approached her because he thought she was alone. As he began to stutter, Satin came up and spoke to him. She introduced herself and said that she was looking for His Excellency to greet him. Delilah was shocked by what was happening, and most importantly, by the mistake she had made. This pathetic and insignificant little bun turned out to be Archbishop Vitalis, Kyrian's brother. Satin began her speech by apologizing, saying she didn't know he would be present. If I had known that His Eminence was at the banquet, I would have greeted him first. Vitalis, having said that he had heard about their wedding, sincerely offered them his congratulations. The singer wondered why she was contacting Del Mare, even in such a situation. The Archbishop continued that he was seeing them together for the first time, but they were right for each other. Then he spoke to Rubler, because his brother relies on his friend very much. Vitalis asked them to continue helping his brother when Jorny approached them. He realized too late that Delilah was standing next to his ex-fiancée. He had a glimmer of hope that he could avoid such a direct confrontation, but there was no escape route. According to the rules of etiquette, all that was left was to speak. Not knowing where to begin, he said that he had not expected to see her, and asked how she was doing. Satin also asked how he dared ask her such a thing after everything that had happened. In response, Jorn mumbled that it was because he had been worried about her all this time. Rubler said it was tactless as a greeting after a long silence. His explanation of what he was experiencing did not convince our hero at all. He started saying that it wasn't like they were making a scene after getting married, but they want him to know that they don't need his care, unlike some others. His opponent's face flushed deeply with shame as he continued. He said that Jorna shouldn't say such things out of concern for the other woman. At that very moment, when the woman he loves is standing next to him and listening, Jorn tried to justify himself to Delilah, but Rubler interrupted him again. He thanked him for his courage in fighting for true love. This is what helped me reunite with my beloved wife, and I am sincerely happy about it. Then he thanked Jorn for his choice, because thanks to him, everything is great for them. Rubler said all this in a completely peaceable tone, but the meaning was not so simple. Delilah noted to herself that Jorn looked completely crushed. They were from guardian families, but she didn't think there was such a difference between them. I thought that those who were watching them from afar probably knew the whole truth. Now, Delilah clearly realized that Jorn would never be able to defeat these two. Looking at Satin, I thought that Del Mare was not just some wildflower, that despite her sophisticated appearance, this woman is difficult to deal with. But in the end, it is also thanks to the strong family into which Satin was born. Delilah thought that if she had been born into such a family, she would have had such power. And if that were the case, he and Jorn could get married. But that's just a dream. While Delilah was daydreaming, Kyrian began searching for our heroes. Rubler, in accordance with the rules of etiquette, asked the Archbishop's permission to take his leave. Then, turning to Yorna, he said goodbye to him, wishing him a pleasant evening. Kyrian complained that the stage felt empty, and that was not his original intention. But he will definitely take into account the mistakes of this year in order to make the next one perfect. There are still 30 minutes until the Pope's speech, and they have no speeches scheduled. He told our heroine that the orchestra had already played everything they had in their repertoire. If they repeat the same song, the guests will lose interest. Kyrian had absolutely no idea what to do in this situation. Then Delilah came up. She said that she accidentally overheard their conversation about how they lacked artists. She asked me to trust her with this time. She came as a companion, but also a singer. The host of the banquet tried to refuse, saying that the orchestra did not know her repertoire. The prima replied that the orchestra would adjust and her voice would sound much louder. The priest had doubts, because if it weren't for the scandal, he would have accepted such an offer. But after thinking it over again, I realized that this was the only solution in this situation. Rubler wanted to stop it, but Satin asked him not to worry. The ceremony was more important. Then she added that we should try to trust and give Delilah another chance. That was all Prima needed. She thought her charm had worked again, and the stage was her element. On it, she felt significantly superior to the others. As soon as she hit the first notes, all eyes turned to her standing on the stage. The expressions on the faces of those present changed as soon as his voice sounded. Delilah saw countless men in the room who lusted after her. But the most important thing that interested her among them was Archbishop Kyrian himself. Her enchanting voice echoed throughout the room, and she wondered what the future held for her. If the place where he wants to get to has already been decided, then he will go to the very top. Thus, the uninvited guest Delilah became the most praised performer of the day. The founding day passed, and Satine's daily peaceful life returned. Rubler distracted our heroine from her thoughts by asking if she was thinking about Yorn. She replied that she had never encountered him since that day, and that it was not he who was bothering her. She said that she was thinking about Vitalis, because so many people were hanging around his brother. He is also a successor, but at the banquet he kept to the side the entire time. The paladin replied that Archbishop Kyrian was almost recognized as the next successor, and there is no need to mislead people. Everyone already tacitly acknowledges this fact. However, Satin did not agree, because until there is a prediction, it is too early to judge. She added that they both must have equal rights to the place of the Holy Father, although she acknowledged that Kyrian's abilities were higher and had been proven to many people. She believed that the fact that there were two successors to the Pope remained unchanged. I thought that Rubler should understand this too, but at the same time he was so smug. Did he forget his duty as a member of the Guardian family because of his personal connections? Understanding her feelings, the paladin thought he should share something with her. Having told Satan about this, he asked her to wait a little. He would be right back. When he brought the box containing the Cardillon family heirloom, she gasped. It was the hilt of the holy sword, and he asked if she would like to support it. Our heroine was very surprised, so Rubler asked what was so strange. She asked, "It's a sacred relic, so how can other people touch it?" The paladin replied that she was not other people, but his one and only wife. But Satan was only able to touch the relic of her home only recently. But the foundations in their families were different, and as a child, Rubler swung this handle. Even Kyrian once came to their house and held the hilt of the sword in his hands. Our hero added that he saw no reason why she couldn't do it. Satin took the handle with trembling hands, and he said that it was nothing special. After thinking for a bit, she answered that it was hot. Then the paladin asked what the handle was. However, she meant something completely different. In fact, his hands were hot. She simply said what she thought, and he already decided that something strange was happening. Then the paladin said that it tickled him when her fingers moved slightly. And in general, her hands are so small and soft, so when he touches them, he starts to get nervous. When he added that he did not understand how such a small body could walk and run. Our heroine caustically replied that it was all because he was ridiculously big. Then Rubler said that when Kyrian took the sword, it called out to him. He brushed it off at the time, but one day a professor at the academy told a story. Several generations ago, it was difficult to determine a successor through divine revelation. Therefore, they collected the holy relics and allowed each candidate to touch them. This is of course an unofficial prophecy, but Kyrian is chosen by the holy relics. Paladin ended up referring to Kyrian as the next pope. Satin felt better when she realized that Rubler was not nominating his friend for the post of pope, but she was still bothered by the feeling that she was expecting something very important from him. She had been thinking so much lately that her tense face worried him, and since her thoughts were occupied with him, she decided to ask anyway. Satin clearly saw Rubler's deep respect and favor towards her. When asked why exactly she, he answered, "Because she keeps appearing." She thought it was a joke, but he replied that in his eyes there was always only her. Then she asked another question, because she was engaged to pathetic Jorn. The paladin, standing next to her, said that she might not believe her, but his answer would not change. Even when she was preparing to marry another, he continued to desire her, and as soon as he saw the opportunity, he took advantage of it completely shamelessly. He doesn't regret it, because for the first time he feels his heart beating. Gently touching her hair, he asked, asking why her. Playing with a strand of hair, he continued that it was all because he had liked her for a long time. and he wanted to live with the one he really loves because of this and proposed. Around the same time, Archbishop Kyrion was sorting out some paperwork. Delilah came to him for an audience and greeted His Eminence. Kyrion thanked her for her help, and the ceremony ended smoothly this year. Then he added that if he wants something, he should ask, and he will fulfill any request. The singer replied that what she wants is not money or fame, but something more valuable. On the day of the ceremony, she filled the gap, and a full 30 minutes saved the situation, so she asks to be allowed to fill it for 30 minutes this time. Delilah remembered very well the way he looked at her performance, with eyes full of desperate thirst for her, and how such a man could reject her. Delilah waited for the right moment for his heart to succumb to her cunning. She played her role confidently and perfectly, and no one could stop her plan. Kyrion was informed that a messenger sent by the paladin was requesting an audience. This messenger claims that he urgently needs his permission to do something. The message was from Ruba, so he gave full control over the situation. Prima clarified that Kyrion trusted the paladin so much that he gave permission without listening. The archbishop replied that Rube was his oldest and most devoted friend, and it was fun to be with him. He added that Rube would be the most useful person when he took over the country. Although this guy is a hopeless romantic who has been in love with the same girl for many years, and she realized that the behavior of Cardion that she saw was not a game. Kyrion asked why she sent the carriage empty that day. He thought something had happened. Delilah remembered the day she came to him, and they started dating. Now they saw each other constantly, and he called her from the Selvio estate several times. She said it was inconvenient when he kept sending out carriages without warning. When asked if Jorn had really told her something, she replied that he was not blind after all. Even Jorn, whom she considered a fool, showed surprising insight. However, he was greatly worried that his mistress was being called by another man. Jorn himself used the situation to take what belonged to someone else. Kyrion advised the Prima to leave Jorn if she was worried about the restrictions. Then the priest asked if she had sent the carriage away because of such a trifle. When she asked him why he was angry, he replied that he hardly was. Rather, he found it funny. I thought that he considered himself above everyone else, but he didn't have the appropriate parameters. This man is absolutely confident and proud that he will one day become the Pope's successor. However, meeting Jorn allowed her to understand her place even more clearly. She was a woman floating with the current, not knowing when she would drown again. The best chance to survive was to bow her head to those above her. And it doesn't matter how well she takes care of herself or hones her skills. Delilah understood that if she was born without status, she would never reach the top. Kyrion said that a friend once told him that she was a dangerous woman. He agrees that there is no man who could handle her. Even a man from a guardian family can't cope, so what about him? She replied that he had the key to changing her whole life. It was dangerous but irresistible. If she has to live as someone's mistress, it would be better to be the mistress of the next ruler. Then she will stand next to the one before whom even this woman bows. She will become the only woman to pass through the guardian family and through the archbishop. Our heroine couldn't sleep and went out onto the balcony to clear her head. The answers to the questions that had been troubling her mind lately were much simpler. Rubler's answer turned out to be so simple and clear that it was somehow even unfair. She thought about the fact that almost 3 months had passed since she started living with Rubler. And what's most interesting is that everything wasn't as unbearable as she imagined. Sometimes it was awkward, though, like with the sudden reduction in distance. But when he worried about her problems and helped her solve them, she was grateful. In her understanding, a husband was someone who shared her home and everyday life with her, someone with whom she can raise an heir, and someone she can trust. She wondered if Rubler could be that person for her. But for now, she didn't know, and was very tired of these doubts tormenting her soul. However, over time, talking to him about divorce became unpleasant, and he looked at her with the saddest expression on his face at the mere mention of it. Satin didn't want to hurt someone who showed such unconditional affection for her. She was also worried about the fact that if he had feelings for her all this time, and her childhood memories were the result of a simple and stupid misunderstanding. So what did he feel when he saw her openly avoiding his company? But now it was useless to think about it, and she decided it would be better to go to sleep. She was about to leave when strange sounds in the garden caught her attention. Rustles and quiet whispers penetrated the silence of the night, causing her slight bewilderment. My intuition told me that there was something dangerous lurking in this moment. She definitely felt someone's gaze, and she definitely wasn't imagining it. There seemed to be a flicker of movement in the darkness. Something was there, and my heart started beating faster. This unexpected incident made Satine listen with caution. A frightening silence fell over the garden, and she hurried back into the room. Our heroine knew for sure that not only the look, but also a strange aura had appeared. She had never felt anything like this in her life, and she was sure of it. But whatever it wasn't a person or even a ghost. This energy felt vile. Her presence evoked an unpleasant, poisonous feeling, like an ominous shadow. Satin had a feeling that something dangerous had slipped through reality. She felt an unpleasant, sticky chill with every cell of her body. No matter how scared she was, she had to warn Rubler. Trying to cope with her inner fear, she ran down the corridor. Every step she took was difficult, and it felt like her legs were being bound by heavy bonds. At one point, it seemed to her that she couldn't take it anymore, and she started screaming. A terrible scream echoed throughout the estate. Rubler rushed headlong towards her. Seeing her, his heart was relieved, but he still asked what that cry was. Throwing herself into his arms, she couldn't immediately explain what was happening. But feeling safe, she said there was something in her bedroom. Rubler was not a paladin for nothing, and took this responsibility very seriously. He ordered the servants who came running to the scream to check Satin's room. But fearing for their safety, our heroine asked no one to enter. Larry reported that there was nothing, but my lady knew that there was something invisible there. This cold, this frozen heartbeat, it couldn't all be just a fantasy. Our hero asked her to calm down and tell him exactly what she saw. It was hard for her to explain, but she was sure that there was something right in front of her. She said that it was looking at her, coming closer, and wanting to hurt her. Our hero asked him to calm down and wait while he checked everything outside, but she began to beg him not to go, because there was definitely something dangerous there. Satin's frightened look convinced him that something had indeed happened. He had been watching her for many years, and knew that such things happened very, very rarely. He didn't want to leave her alone, but he decided to let the servants go so they could rest. Larry offered to help, saying that she could stay with my lady until she fell asleep. The paladin replied that there was no need for that. He and Satine would go to his room. In order not to embarrass her, he chivalrously invited her to make herself comfortable on the bed. He added that he would sleep on the sofa and would be on duty until the morning, so there was no need to worry. Satin asked sheepishly, probably looking silly, like a little child. Rubler noted that this was a rather striking comparison. Apparently she did this often. She replied that only sometimes, but she had never seen anything like it before. She said that she felt like she was in a nightmare and was sure she saw something, and she asked if she was just scared over a trifle. It would be a bit embarrassing, but he would rather she was wrong than have someone actually threaten her. Putting his arm around her shoulders, he added that the most important thing now was that she was safe. She had heard similar words before, but now they sounded different. She said out loud that before he came running, she was in complete horror. At that moment, it seemed to her that her heart was about to burst from fear because of all this. But as soon as I saw his face, I immediately calmed down and was very glad that he was there. Having said what I meant, I realized that I had already said too much. So she said that that was all, she was tired, and it would be better to go and rest. When he turned to her and said that he was promising her, she stopped abruptly. The paladin promised that as long as he was near, she would always be safe. He promised that he would protect her so that she would never experience fear again. Then he also said that if she ever felt something strange again, then, without hesitating for a second, let him call him. He will come running faster than anyone. He took a few steps towards her and asked if we could go to bed now. Rubler slowly approached and looked into her eyes, which made her heart beat faster. He caressed her lips tenderly, and she felt her heart stop beating. Satin thought that if he kissed her now, she wouldn't be able to help but respond. However, his next gesture was so unexpected that she was at a loss. But the very next second, a wave of desire overwhelmed our heroine. She wanted and did not want to fight this sudden urge at the same time. Feeling the color rise in her face, she bent down shyly to hide it. Rubler leaned forward a little and lightly touched her forehead with his lips, and he kissed her tenderly, as if trying to calm and comfort her at that moment. There was deep respect and genuine affection in this gentle gesture. She had absolutely no idea how to react, but a smile blossomed on his face. It all ended as suddenly as it began. He said she must be tired. He added that he would turn off the light himself and let her go to bed. and wished her sweet dreams. Her heart was pounding like crazy, and there was no sleep in either eye. Thinking that if he thought she would fall asleep, he was a fool, she fell asleep. Hearing her even breathing and peaceful snoring, he went to his sofa. The first thing our hero did the next morning was to comb the garden. Soon one of the servants called him to show him the carcass of a goat. Rubler was told that there was a ranch nearby where they raised goats, and this one must have escaped. It looks like a wild animal attacked, and my lady was most likely frightened by the goat's cries. But he knew that if there really was a wild animal there, Satin would have understood immediately. He found it strange that there were only bite marks on the body, but the kid had not been eaten. This brought to mind recent deaths of animals allegedly killed by evil spirits. If what Satin felt was a spirit, and if that spirit was approaching her, if he was near her room, then she could end up like that kid. The paladin ordered not to leave my lady for a minute until he returned from work. He also advised everyone to split into groups of at least 3 people. He didn't believe for a second the idea that a wild animal was behind this. Therefore, he advised to act quickly before something worse happened. When Satin woke up, she didn't immediately understand where she was. Then she remembered that she was at Rubler's. He was just getting ready for work and advised her not to stay alone for now. Ignoring her counter-question, he asked if she had been able to relax. Asking him what he meant, she called him by his shortened name, Rub. He liked it and said she should have addressed him that way from the beginning. Adding that it didn't matter now, he changed the subject and started talking about evil spirits. She thought it was an old legend, but now it was more than just a scary story. He didn't want to hide anything from her, so he told her everything in detail. He reported at the end that this morning a kid goat was found in the garden, also killed. Seeing that she was worried, he said that the Holy Knights would be patrolling, and that he himself would track down this creature, so it would be better for her to stay home for now. And it would be even better if she stayed here, in his room, like today. It may be inconvenient, but he won't do anything that she might not like. Satin was upset that he would be returning late again, but she didn't consider it inconvenient to stay in his room, because he promised to protect her. He blushed when she said that staying with him was the safest decision. She was interested in whether it was possible to kill a spirit with a sword. Rubler believed that it was possible, but it was something they didn't understand, so she asked him to be careful. Our hero asked her to repeat her warning, and then again and again. Snorting in displeasure, she asked if he was joking or if he had lost his hearing. To this, the paladin replied that it sounded pleasant, just like a delight to his ears. Satin took this matter very seriously and gave instructions to the servants. She asked to lock all the doors, close all the windows, and not open the curtains. Larry said that she could still believe in the beast, but in an evil spirit. She continued that she always thought that demons and spirits were just old fairy tales. Milady replied that it was hard to believe, but Rube was not one to joke about such things. I wanted to tell Larry to be careful, but I asked why she was looking at him like that. The maid replied that the mistress was now much more comfortable with the paladin, and that she knew they would get along as soon as they had time. Larry imagined how the two would soon be like a real married couple. As she walked away, she sang, and they couldn't contain themselves, and passionately embraced right in the hallway. Having demanded that they stop, the mistress asked if the maid had finished locking everything. Answering that she had even checked my lady's bedroom herself, she heard some noise. The sound was unlike any animal roar they had heard before. The servants, scared half to death, gathered in the hall on the first floor. Our heroine asked them if they knew what the noise was, but no one knew. The head chef asked in a loud voice if she had heard the howling too. Another servant said that the sound alone gave him goosebumps. Satin realized that this was not a hallucination, but a terrible and piercing howl. She didn't want to believe that an evil spirit had appeared outside the estate. The last time he appeared, he didn't make such a shrill sound. But until they knew exactly what it was, they could not say that it was not a spirit. The servants were terrified, and as the mistress of the estate, she had to calm them down. However, going outside or even opening doors can be very dangerous. The young servant said that he knew what a horse's cry sounded like. He had heard it once. I didn't know why they were howling like that, so I decided to check. Maybe they had run out of hay. They didn't stop him, although it was strange that they didn't keep an eye on the stables. They discussed how it was necessary to frighten everyone like that, but another servant was worried. Satin noticed this and asked what happened, why he looked so pale. He replied that when he checked the stables that evening, everything was fine. The horses were calm, and there was plenty of hay and water, so there was no reason for them to howl like that. They decided that if everything was okay, then Debon would probably just check and come back right away. Satin remembered that the stables were right next to the main gate. If everything is fine, there is food and water, then why hasn't that guy come back yet? She asked the servants this question, because quite a lot of time had already passed. But they didn't have time to answer her, because another sound was heard from behind the door. Everyone listened. This time the sound was a little different. Everyone looked at each other. Our heroine understood that the servants were so frightened that they could not do anything. However, as a housewife, she could not leave the young man alone on the street. Some decision had to be made urgently, and it fell on her shoulders. When the maid asked where she was going, she replied that she had to open the door. It was dangerous, but Debon was still outside, and she had to bring him back. She was no less scared than others, but she saw no other way out. Overcoming her fear, she opened the door slightly to at least look through a crack. She remembered the first time she came face to face with an evil spirit. Then, too late, she realized why she hadn't noticed him earlier. Everyone thought these were old tales, and who would have expected such a creature? A terrible scene unfolded before her eyes. Something dark was capturing the servant. His disembodied, nimble tentacles entangled the poor guy more and more. Realizing that his life was in danger and they had to save him, she tried to get out. But her legs refused to obey, and for some reason, her body did not move at all. Feeling completely helpless, Satin remained silent at the door. However, the servant's question about what this evil spirit was that they were talking about brought her back to her senses. Realizing that the household was panicking, I realized that this could not be allowed to happen. They were afraid because this was the first time they had encountered such a phenomenon. And before Rube returns, she must take control and calm everyone down. She demanded that they bring her a candle, and they would go save Debon. Hiding her fear in the farthest corner, she went to protect these people. The servant who brought the candle asked in fear what to do with it now. Our heroine ordered to throw it out into the street, and they would see if it worked. This idea with the light was completely intuitive, but fortunately it worked. The evil spirit began to gradually release the guy, and soon he was finally freed. The servants were delighted because it was quite effective, and they could take Debon away. She also saw the evil spirit retreat, but she also noticed something else. Satin warned everyone that it was heading into the house, and that they needed to close the doors. The door was quickly slammed shut, but something clearly tried to get inside. Someone suggested locking the doors to prevent him from getting into the house. Lost in thought, our heroine noticed that it saw them and attacked without hesitation. The question then arose as to why it let the guy go in order to attract more people. Ruba's question about whether she remembered what they had been taught at the academy came to mind. And his answer is that demons hide in the shadows when someone is not vigilant. She realized that this was a hint on how to deal with this demon or evil spirit. Demons hide in the shadows, so the only way to defeat them is to turn on the light. Moreover, the spirit had previously also beaten its body to avoid the light from the candle. At least knowing how to get rid of him gave her strength. At that moment, a sticky chill ran across her skin, and she became wary. A moment later, Larry was screaming for someone to throw a candle to drive him away. Satin said if they drove away the spirit and barricaded themselves, they would be safe. But what about Debon lying outside, the ranches and the houses of ordinary people? Last time, the evil spirit took a goat from the ranch as its first victim. If the hunt here fails, it will go to the village in search of other prey. People who know nothing about the evil spirit will be attacked without a chance to escape. She suggested letting the evil spirit in and placing it in a room full of light. Larry asked where they would get enough light to illuminate the entire mansion. But Satan had already found a way out of the situation. There is oil in the paint on the paintings. She suggested letting the spirit into the house and lighting everything inside so that there were no shadows. While it is confused, drive it into any room, luring it into a trap. They must take care to burn and destroy the evil spirit. Until Rube returns, she will somehow manage to contain this spirit. She set about her plan without delay, and the spirit followed her. Satin put out the candle, and Larry commented that it was hidden again. Shadows were created by blind spots, created by furniture and walls. Our heroine thought that they needed to make a big fire throughout the room. The maid asked a reasonable question: in which room could this be done? To which the lady replied that there was a room that was not currently in use. Larry asked her to leave the bedroom immediately as soon as the creature entered. In theory, everything seemed simple, but in practice, things did not go so smoothly. It seemed to be watching too, as it was in no hurry to come closer. Then Satan thought that maybe it was all about the candle she was holding in her hand, and she asked Larry to take a candle. The maid became terribly worried. She said she needed to lure it into the room, but because of the light, it wouldn't come closer. Then Satan added that everything would be fine. There would be candles inside too, so she'll just have to light them before it gets close. Our heroine tried to move not too fast, but not too slowly. There was still just a little bit left for the evil spirit to move deeper into the room. Completely unexpectedly, the unexpected happened, and the door slammed shut. She realized with genuine horror that this creature had not fallen for her trap. Moreover, it tried to close her with him. She thought that she needed to turn on the light. She didn't even want to imagine what would happen if she let the creature get closer. It was too late to regret. Somehow she had trapped herself. She began to lose all hope, and at that moment, she heard her name. As soon as I heard this familiar voice, the fear immediately receded. And even though her heart was still pounding like crazy, she knew she would be okay. She replied that she was fine, and asked what was more important. What about the evil spirit? Rubler replied that he definitely felt it when he struck him with the sword. It seemed to him that it was not damaged at all, and that he would have to tear it into pieces. Satan warned that it was going to hide in the shadows and then attack, to fight something that has no physical form, which reforms like smoke. Even if you cut him into pieces, even our hero had a limit to his endurance. She understood that at this rate it would never end and they would not win. And I couldn't just stand aside, because it was definitely somewhere nearby. Rubler also understood that no matter how much he swung his sword, it didn't even get smaller. The creature continued to regenerate, and they just walked in circles. She came to the rescue and said that she would drive the spirit into a corner with the help of light, and she asked Ruba to make sure that it couldn't hide somewhere else. Having understood her idea, he decided that he should do exactly as she suggested. As he suspected, it worked. All that was left was to add light to finish it off. Our hero asked Satine to help him, and she threw the lamp into the very center of the creature. Holding the writhing tentacles in check with his sword, he waited for it to end. With their combined efforts, they succeeded and managed to finish off the spirit. But it took them a few more moments to realize what had happened. Our heroine buried her face in his suit and burst into uncontrollable nervous laughter. Rubler was scared, and she explained that her legs were giving way, and she had been tense for a long time. When asked if anything hurt, she replied that no, just a slight tremor. At that moment, the maid, who was very worried, ran into the bedroom. Surrounded by weeping servants, she looked out the window at the rising sun. And I felt relief. It was the end of a night that was worse than any nightmare. Larry later informed the lady that, fortunately, Debon's body was not damaged. She added that she wasn't sure that this could be called luck. He was alive, but there was a scar left, which left the evil spirit, and it entered deeply into the flesh and will not disappear until the end of life. When Larry told her that the paladin had scolded the servants, Satine asked if that was fair. After all, everyone was in danger, and the maid said that he was always worried about her, and that he scolded them harshly, asking why they didn't stop her earlier. Satan asked with displeasure what this story had to do with this dress. Larry replied that the smoke had reached the wardrobe, and the dress was deep inside. That's why it didn't burn. And even if she doesn't like it, there's nothing she can do about it this time. Just as our heroine was about to say something caustic to the maid, Rub entered. In an unusually stern tone, he asked if she had anything he didn't already know about, but she didn't understand what was going on. So he said that he had just heard it when he was coming here, that she volunteered to be bait, and why commit such a reckless act. In response, she asked, "The spirit appeared right here, and someone had to catch it." But Rube believed that catching the spirit was his job, and she didn't need to interfere. In an innocent tone, she asked how she was supposed to know when he would return, and that she couldn't just watch someone's head get bitten off right in front of her. Rube replied that she was not a member of a knightly order and did not really wield a sword. She wondered if she was not a knight, she should stick her head in the sand. He told her that she should avoid danger, because the spirit could attack her too. She defended her point of view, because she had no desire to risk her life, and she tried her best to protect everyone, and needed praise for it. I never would have thought that he would look at her like that. She said that he couldn't even imagine how much she wanted him to be there then. Then she asked them to forget about everything, and they both did everything they could in that situation. Having spoken her mind, she said that she had nothing more to add and that she was tired. The paladin couldn't stand it and almost shouted that she could actually have gotten hurt. When he saw that evil spirit rush at her, his heart almost broke. He added that the mere thought that he had simply stood by while she was in danger. With bitterness in her voice, she couldn't even imagine how much this disappointed him. Then he also said that everything he said upset her, and he was very sorry. That he didn't want to fight with her about this either, he was just angry at himself. Because he made a promise to protect and ensure her safety, it is his duty. Then she asked it because he was a paladin and received a negative answer. Looking her straight in the eyes, he answered as he thought was right. Because he was her husband. Our heroine asked again because he was her husband, and he answered that it was exactly like that. He was finally able to take the place next to her that he had been waiting for all his life. If I suddenly lost her in an instant, I wouldn't be able to bear it. After considering his words, Satin replied that, to be honest, she knew she had been reckless. And as he told her, she is not a knight. If she hid from fear, then what about the others? What will happen to all the people of this estate and their neighbors in the villages? And they must protect them. And what is most important is what he himself told her. She remembered well his words, that as long as he was near, she would be safe. She added, embarrassed. That's why she probably subconsciously believed in him. She continued more confidently that she believed that he was very strong and would save her. She even felt better after telling him all this and laughing. And then she thanked him for keeping his promise and saving her. Having listened to this speech, our hero quickly grabbed her into his arms. She found it hard to breathe. He was holding her so tightly when she heard his gratitude for believing in him and saving their people. Rube also added that she was amazing. Satin thought he was saying what she needed to hear at the perfect moment. I still asked out loud what he meant by this, whether anyone was asking for praise. Our hero said in a quiet voice that he spoke sincerely. Didn't she like it? She had some strange feeling. She didn't know and asked not to ask. At that moment, Rub could no longer resist the desire to touch her. Satin felt a strong, warm arm wrap gently around her shoulder. The soft, melting warmth of his kiss penetrated her, scattering thoughts like sand. She managed to realize that all the processes in her head were disappearing, and only instinct remained. The deeper she sank into his kiss, the more the world seemed to slip out from under her feet. She felt pleasure. She did not consider the touch of their bodies as a marital duty. The thought flashed through my head that maybe it was a good thing that he ruined the wedding. When their lips parted, she suddenly asked, "This isn't his first kiss, is it?" He had such a surprised look on his face that she explained that he was too good a kisser. Smiling mysteriously, he answered in a cheerful tone that maybe 200 times. She was so shocked by this answer that it made him even more amused. Pointing to his head, he replied, "Right here with you," and she understood his hint. But why is her heart, which thinks he is a pervert, beating so fast? Taking her hands, Rub said that he couldn't help himself. He had always been like this. He continued that from the very moment he realized that he was in love with her, a very long time ago. A thrill passed through their touching palms, and she wanted to stay there forever. No one bothered her, and she decided that she would simply immerse herself in this rhythm. Unexpectedly, she revealed that she used the paintings as firewood. He said everything was fine. Then she added that her bedroom was completely trashed. It will probably take several months to dismantle and repair everything. For Rube, this was the most joyful news he had heard that day. He even explained that now she would no longer have to return to her room. Satin admitted that all this time, she did not feel like she had married him. She explained that this was because she got married without any determination or preparation. Marriage is an important event in life, but she changed her husband overnight. So she continues to wander alone, not knowing how to figure it out. She always hated things happening without a plan, and she needed his help. She said she was still confused and had never thought about a situation like this. She added that he said that he had imagined life with her for a long time. Then she said that he could not teach her what he had imagined. And what she wants to hear about is the future he's been dreaming about all these years. After hearing this request, our hero blushed, not knowing what to answer. He felt somehow even awkward telling her about such delicate things. Seeing his confusion, she asked if he was embarrassed to say it out loud. Having answered that no, and that he was simply happy, he merged with her in a voluptuous kiss. And this was the real truth, because his dreams were becoming reality. Afterwards, he said that he could never have imagined that she would ask for something like that. And it also seems to him that his heart is about to burst in his chest. He is so happy. She became interested. He imagined absolutely everything. But he didn't expect this. Without hiding his feelings, he replied that everything was correct, which is why he was even happier. Because now it seems she has truly accepted him as her husband. The color suddenly flooded his face again as he asked what he should do. After all, from this moment on, she doesn't have the slightest chance of escaping from him. Because from now on, he intends to treat her like a real wife. Our heroes approached each other as if drawn by an invisible force. Everything around them disappeared. They merged in a kiss, forgetting about everything in the world. Breaking off the kiss, Rube asked if his precious wife was too nervous. In response, he received that he was too calm. He slowly repeated her wording. And he added that he was glad that everything looked exactly this way. Although, to be honest, taking a short pause for a kiss, he continued that he was actually very worried. Continuing to gently seduce Satine, he mentally thanked the fool Jorn. But extraneous thoughts quickly dissolved into his inner feelings. Satin couldn't believe that he was actually that worried. But at the same time, be so sweet and shameless, and also quite persistent. Pulling away, she said sheepishly that everything was fine, so that was enough. He waited for her to say what he had done wrong, but she only said his name. Looking at Satine's face now, he suddenly remembered their childhood. Even when they were studying at the academy, she was that little girl who stood out. Wherever she was, and whenever he looked at her, he began to dream. He couldn't help but imagine, if only he could take that little hand, if only he could kiss those lips, he would be the happiest man in the world. But he couldn't win her attention, and understood that she would never accept him. He thought exactly like that, and that's why he was always trying to get rid of his feelings. And now, this is the very hand he could only dream of within his reach. And he feels like he's getting a reward for all these endless years of waiting. He said out loud that he didn't even know what words to use to express this happiness. But he sincerely thanks her for finally accepting him. In the morning, the paladin woke up with the first rays of the sun in an elated mood. He needed to go and report to Kyrian, but he didn't want to leave home. Seeing that Satan had woken up, he told her that the weather was nice today. Then I asked her if she had slept well today, and heard her grumbling. Our heroine muttered, "The weather is good after everything that happened last night." He tormented her all night, because of which she could not close her eyes. She had no conscience at all. In a playful tone, he asked why his wife was sulking so early in the morning. When she asked him to leave, he said that he didn't want to be separated from his wife for a minute. Then she asked him if it wasn't enough for him to spend the whole night with her. She continued that if her body were water, she would have already evaporated. Satin was clearly not in a good mood, since she said that he was too clingy from the very beginning, repeating loudly in her ear that it was sticky, and even yesterday she remembered. This made her blush, and she added, a little more softly, that he was persistent. She added that this was her first time, so she shouldn't take it to heart. Rubler replied that because it was their first time, he had to go all in. Satin replied that if he had such a passion for studying, he would have graduated with honors. But he tended to concentrate only on what he liked. So he told her that last night he had discovered another talent in himself, and he insinuated that maybe they would study it a little more. As soon as his large hands touched her skin, Satine's mood changed. She was not against continuing, but there was a knock on the door, and it was time for him to get ready. Our hero said in his heart that his mood had only just begun to improve. Satin advised against doing this in broad daylight, as servants often pass by, and she asked why he was looking at her so suspiciously and whether she was mistaken. And Rube was just thinking about how he could please his white and fluffy wife today. Having demanded that he not say such things again, she added that it was time to go to work. And he himself said that he had to urgently report to Kyrian about yesterday's evil spirit. Having agreed, he advised Ars to sleep a little longer while he was gone. Kissing his embarrassed wife goodbye, he promised that he would return soon.